Ted Kennedy Jr., the son of the late Senator Edward Kennedy, is a healthcare attorney and advocate for people with disabilities. When he was 12 years old, he lost his leg to bone cancer. That's a picture of him taken with his dad about 6 years after that. He's a strong supporter of the UN Disabilities Treaty. He hasn't given up on it. I spoke to him earlier today. It astounds me, it's one thing to lose based on facts. It's another thing to lose based on things that are completely made up. And it seems like you guys lost based on stuff that had nothing to do with the actual treaty.
Well, it's true. It's a sad day for people with disabilities, and it's a sad day for the U.S. Senate. Because you ask yourself, Anderson, who could be against a treaty that basically affords people with disabilities the same rights and opportunities as everyone else, that doesn't cost the United States one extra penny? We're talking about affording disabled Americans, including disabled American veterans, the same opportunities overseas as they have here at home. Unfortunately, our cause, the cause of disability rights, was caught up in UN politics and the politics of homeschooling and Rick Santorum and Glenn Beck, the politics of the far right that intimidated many senators, including 7 senators who had verbally affirmed their support for this bill, including Senator Moran, who was the co-sponsor of the treaty, who ended up voting against the treaty.
He actually stood by John McCain's side and supporting this. And did he give you any reason why he reversed himself?
Well, I think that in the last week or so, a lot of fiction, a lot of innuendo was drummed up by Senator Mike Lee and Senator Santorum and others about how this treaty may impact homeschooling, okay, that has nothing, absolutely nothing to do with the treaty itself.
But this treaty does not affect U.S. law.
No, it doesn't affect U.S. law. But I think that evidently they didn't feel like it gave them the sort of guarantees that they were looking for. But in fact, when it passed the Foreign Relations Committee on the 13-6 vote, a number of these concerns were actually incorporated.
This was really a treaty about people with disabilities overseas.
This is about bringing the rest of the world up to the U.S. standards, okay? And so it does impact Americans who travel overseas, who go work overseas. Somebody with a disability who wants to stay in a hotel in a foreign country, or go to work in a foreign country, or hail a taxi in a foreign country. Not to mention the fact that it also impacts 650 million people around the world. Children with disabilities around the world, who, unlike the United States, do not have access to a public school education. It affords them huge rights. And for the United States to not be in the vanguard, we've been in the forefront of disability rights. And disability rights has always been a bipartisan cause from the Rehab Act of 1973 to special education, where people like my dad worked with Senator Orrin Hatch, Senator Lowell Weicker, so many other Republicans in a bipartisan way, because disability crosses every single socioeconomic barrier. So I think what is upsetting about this vote is now all of a sudden disability law, which has never been political before, is now suddenly politicized.
I mean, besides John McCain, you had former Senator Dole.
Yes.
You had Dick Thornburgh, former Attorney General, who
yes.
I guess is the father of a disabled child.
That's correct.
And I guess if anybody would knew about the impact on U.S. law, the former Attorney General of the United States would have a pretty good idea if this impacted U.S. law.
Well, I think that's a very good point. We did have eight Republicans, and I take my hat off to them, because they had to face very stiff pressure by the far right not to join with the Democrats to vote this treaty. As you know, we need 66 votes, 2/3 majorities to pass a treaty in the country. But we had the support of former President Bush, President Herbert Walker Bush, as you mentioned, Dick Thornburgh, former Attorney General, who understands U.S. law probably better than anybody else in the country. We had people like Senator Bob Dole and his wife Elizabeth, who were on the floor at the time, who's been a staunch advocate for disability policy. So this shouldn't be, Anderson, this should not be a partisan issue. The rights of people with disabilities. I mean, come on. And yet it has been politicized, unfortunately.
Are you hoping that next year you might bring this up again?
Yes, we're going to come back. As you know, it took, for African Americans, for gay Americans, for women, the struggle for equal rights and justice took many, many years. And so too it is in the disability rights movement. And, I just think this treaty will happen. because it's inevitable. How can you deny the rights to millions of people around the world? And so I do think it's going to come back. Senator Kerry has made a promise to bring it back. And you know, we're hoping one day that this treaty will pass, in the very near future, in fact.
Well, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for raising this important issue, Anderson.